Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from AT3, part of our series of operations in the time of COVID-19. We know that many state AT programs either put on by themselves or in partnerships some kind of an AT conference, which most people are understanding that in 2020 and 2021 will probably need to be virtual, if at all. So we do have an esteemed panel today, and we will run approximately an hour and a quarter. And here's our panel. Melissa DeMo from Cough Drop, but you probably know her best from her work with AAC in the cloud. David Dichter from ATIA. Mike Murata from the New Jersey AT program. Caroline Van Howe, also from ATIA. And Therese Wilcombe from the New Hampshire program. So they bring a wealth of information and experience to today's program that I think will be helpful for you going forward in planning a virtual AT conference. So just a few reminders. To see the captions, click on the CC button on the control panel. By now, you're all Zoom pros, so you know what to do. What we're doing today is please put all your questions and comments in the chat window, and these will be addressed at the conclusion of the panel. And we hope that you'll also share any of your experiences, even if you've only been an attendee to a virtual conference. As always, please be sure to check in at at3center.net events page. And you know our new protocol is that registration links are sent out via the AT3 listserv. Please complete post-webinar surveys. You all know the importance of evaluating our activities, and we especially want to know your hot topics. So today, here's the categories of information that we will address: presenters and speakers, attendees, exhibitors, and logistics. So we're going to start off with a deeper dive into the topic of presenters and speakers. So how do you find and vet speakers who will be engaging and dynamic in a remote format? We know people who are great face-to-face may not translate into virtual. So we'll call on Mike and then Melissa to give us some insights into this.
Very good. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. A couple things. I know we're supposed to do our quick intro, right, Amy? You can just shake your head. I saw you drinking. I have my note of what I'm supposed to be talking about today. Like Amy said before, I'm Mike Murata. I'm from the New Jersey program. I've been doing quite a bit of this already, so I'm excited to hear other people's thoughts and experiences with doing virtual conferences. I've already run two. One was what I would consider more of a traditional conference where speakers were selected ahead of time with presentations and sharing information that way. So what I would consider a traditional workshop. The other one that I did was a virtual ed camp, which is a little different. It's by its design an unconference. So there was no planning beforehand. And there were no presentations. So each of those kind of brought different experiences and had different ways of looking at having them run. And right now I'm knee deep in scheduling another virtual conference with one of our state agencies, an organization, not an agency, one of our organizations in our state that focuses on students with learning disabilities who are taking their conference that was supposed to happen in March live, which got postponed, and we're making it virtual, and we're going to do that in August. And then I'm also in the process of planning our statewide AT summit, which will happen at the end of September. So now that I got all that out of the way, let's answer some of the questions. How do you find and vet speakers who will be engaging in this remote format? I think it's interesting. I said when we were talking the other day, we had a planning meeting, and I said to people before the electricity took my power out and I had to leave the meeting because I couldn't get back on, I start with reaching out to people I know and people I've seen present and people I've partnered with at other conferences and seen them share information. Because like Amy said, it is not every presenter translates to a virtual presentation. It is different, and you have to be prepared for that. You can't talk from the slides for an hour. Nobody wants to see that. They want to have interaction. They want to be brought in somehow. One of the things I found most exciting about the Ed Camp we did, which was virtual, by its design, and Ed Camp is a conversation. So there were no slides at all. It was just people in the grid view in Zoom and all of us with our microphones on and just having a conversation. That was incredibly engaging because everyone had an opportunity to participate. So when I think about that and what we look for, I first start with people I know. Second, when we're reaching out to people to present, asking them pretty pointed questions. Reiterating, hey, by the way, this will be virtual. What's your strategy to engage the audience as you go forward? How much information will you be sharing? How many moments where there will be for a break or an opportunity for interaction? And have people kind of explain that out a little bit. I think has been a really important thing. And I had one person after we talked who had said, you know what, I don't think this is for me, so I think I'm going to pass after the conversation, because they just felt like they didn't have a handle on the technology part and the presentation part and the engagement part. There were too many pieces that were running at the same time. So they felt it was better to kind of wait a little bit. And they instead attended the conference, saw how it went, and then felt a lot better about maybe participating in the next one. So that was a good way to look at it too. I probably have more to say, but I'll stop and Melissa can jump in, and then if I think of something else, I'll pop back on.
Sounds good. Yeah, I agree with everything that Mike said. So I'm Melissa DeMoe. I work for Cough Drop. It's an augmentative communication program, but one of my main responsibilities is that I'm kind of the primary organizer of AAC in the cloud. I don't do any of the tech, so I'm not that guy. Our tech guy is amazing, but I do all of the gathering of presenters and putting things together and creating everything that goes on there. So we have a little bit of experience with online conferences. This year, we just finished AAC in the cloud this year, and it was our 4th year. So feel free to take a peek at the website and see some of the things that went on this year. We usually have between 30 and 50 presenters that come and be part, and I completely agree with the things that Mike has talked about, that we normally start out by talking to people that we know, people that we have experience with, and then we'll ask them if they have suggestions or ideas, somebody that they know that's great. We also watch a lot of programs online, and if we can see a program that's got some really good ideas or information, we may reach out to them and say, hey, do you have somebody that would like to share some of your insights or some of the things you're doing, or talk about your research, and come in and share that with us as well. We also do a call for presentations every year that goes out online, and people can fill out, like Mike said, we're very pointed in our questions. We try to make sure that we get a lot of information, and then we've learned to really believe what people say. So if they fill things out and it just feels a little awkward or a little hinky, there's a reason for that. We try to trust ourselves and either dig a little deeper or maybe pass on that one until we have some more information, but we really do try to trust what people tell us about themselves. We find that that's a really good, important piece of that. So AAC in the Cloud is a completely virtual conference where you're not engaging with an audience. It's you and a moderator when you're giving your presentation, although there is an audience viewing the presentation. It's just you and the moderator. So you do have to, that is a different dynamic than if you are talking live to a bunch of people, or even if you're on a chat with a bunch of people. So we try to make our presenters aware of that. As part of AAC in the Cloud, we also do an event that we call Lightning Talks, where we allow people to come and have 5 or 7 minutes to talk about a topic of their choice. And that's a very different piece that will allow them to let us know what they're going to talk about, but there are no slides, there are no pictures, there are none of those kinds of things. So that becomes a little more conversational and a little more kind of personal, a little less prepared. And there's a good side and bad side to all of that too, but I guess the main thing that I would say as you're choosing presenters is trust what you know and trust what someone tells you about themselves and be willing to listen to what they say because they mean it. So there you go.
That's really good. I have nothing to add beyond that, Melissa. That was awesome. Yeah, I agree, 100%. I know I'm supposed to speak about the next bullet too, so I'll just keep talking, I guess. At some point, Amy will just shut me down. She'll just turn my mic off. Tips for creating engaging and dynamic sessions. I saw Angela put in the chat, and I couldn't agree more with her. And I know we're supposed to wait till the end, but it's too bad. I'm going to say it anyway. That she's looking for things that might be fun to present and feeling a little less content heavy. And I think it's a really good point. I think that a lot of us, I mean, how many Zoom meetings have you been on today? Don't answer, just put it in your own head. I've been in a few. And so after a while, I don't have the bandwidth to absorb a lot of deep content if you're just going to put it all out at me visually and then just talk at me. And so I think less is more. And so I agree with Angela 100%. Find the key pieces. I like this idea now of virtual because it's forcing me as a presenter, which I think is helping. It's forcing me as a presenter to boil down what I want to say to a couple key points with a couple key pieces of information to support them, and then bring people in and ask them to participate, whether it's through the chat, whether it's through popping onto the camera and turn their microphone on. Either way, I think that's a really nice way to do it. We have to value the people that are in these presentations. They have great stuff to add. We have to find moments to drop that in and let them participate. So I think those are some good ones. Angela, you were putting some great stuff in the chat. Thank you.
So Therese, I think, do a brief intro of yourself, but you've got some experience for creating engaging and dynamic sessions. So share with us.
Yes, I'm Therese Wilcombe. I'm the director of New Hampshire's statewide assistive technology program, and thrilled that Amy invited me to present because I do a lot of hands-on fabrication workshops. And I like what Angela was saying about having people do some of the pre-work. So you know how when you're in a Zoom meeting and a lot of people will be looking at their emails or checking out a website and you don't even know that they're on that. But when you do a hands-on fabrication workshop and you're expecting all the presenters to build at the same time, they can't be looking at their text messages or other sites. So it is definitely engaging. And I just wanted to show you a few tips. It says that I cannot share, Amy. So you need to let me share.
Try now. I stopped sharing.
Okay. Okay, cool. Uh-oh. Okay, let's try it again. Boy, it's not letting me go into Zoom for some.
Jamie, can you make Therese a co-host?
Yeah, let me do it right now.
Mhm.
Amy, I believe we've lost Therese.
She's off.
Okay. Hopefully she'll be back
Oh,
on
there she
soon.
is.
Okay. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I
Do
know. Let me,
Okay.
it's not letting me access the Zoom page. So all right, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, great. So I am going to try one more time to share. So it's not letting me, oh, well, it's not letting me share my screen for some reason. All right, so I'm just going to comment on this instead. So the pictures I was trying to share with you are, I have two ways in which I am doing hands-on. And one is I have the cell phone up over the top on clamped onto the table. So I've got a little quick grip clamp and some lock line material. And so then I can see my hands. And I actually recommend using two things. One is having the cell phone with Zoom and the computer with Zoom. So you have two connections. Because one is I can quickly see everybody on the big screen as they're building together. They're able to see me on the screen, which is really great. And then if I'm doing larger hands-on fabrication, what I figured out is those OT lights that are on the tree lamp kind of OT light, a floor lamp. And the OT light provides a really, really nice nice spectrum of nice white light. So I don't get any shadows when I'm presenting and showing how to fabricate. The other is attached to that OT light is 3/4 inch lock line, which then holds my iPad up higher. And that's what I like about when I'm presenting with my iPad, I'm able to zoom in and zoom out. When you're demonstrating things that are tiny, you've got to get that camera close, versus you're demonstrating how to make something larger and you got to get that camera further away. So that has been really kind of cool. And a couple things is that if you're going to show videos, and I will show like 15 seconds to 2 minutes, 3-minute video clips ahead of time. So we begin with the end in mind. What are you going to be making? This is what it looks like when you're making it. Then, so that's a pre-recorded video. Then I switch to the camera where I'm showing them, okay, let's get started. Let's build. And then I will say to people, all right, show me your device, show me what you're working on. If I can get people to have the two cameras, then if they can pin their camera that has the phone aiming down, then I'm seeing everybody live. I'm seeing everybody's hands. I'm seeing how they're holding the tool, so I can jump in there and provide feedback. So it has been really positive workshops, really, really engaging. And back to Angela, what she posted is, I will ask people to watch some of these video clips ahead of time. I'll ask people to show up with a pair of scissors. I ship out all the kits ahead of time. And some of the stuff is like pre-scored. And I have to think about my training webinars are only 1 hour. So people have to be able to build the device within an hour. So I have to be mindful on the time. But it's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you for your insights on that. See if I can go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. So how about supporting speakers? What can we do to help support speakers? So
I feel like I'm going
Caroline,
off script now. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this
yeah,
anymore. I
now
realize
it's Caroline and Melissa. How do we support speakers?
Go
Hi,
ahead, Carolyn. Oh,
everybody.
wait.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead first, Melissa?
Yes, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Caroline Van Howen. I'm with ATIA. I think I probably know some of you, but for those of you who don't know about ATIA, we do two large professional development events, one of which is the year-round ATIA Learning Center, where we do live webinars, very similar to what we're doing right now, and also we record those, and those are available as on-demand content. And the other large professional development event we do is usually, in other times, a face-to-face conference. And as some of you may know, we have pivoted to a virtual conference for our January in 2021. We will be doing the ATIA 2021 AT Connected as a virtual event. And David will be sharing a lot more about that as we get there. But specifically on sort of supporting speakers. So we have a lot of experience on supporting speakers with our ATIA Online Learning Center, which we are kind of transposing to supporting speakers for our virtual event. And we do very much, we do a number of things, and I'm sure Melissa does the same, but we give them a very clear picture of the platform they'll be working in and some tips and techniques and guidelines of how the webinar is structured, some housekeeping items that we ask them to look and review ahead of time. Then we do a rehearsal or an orientation with our speakers. And this is managed by our webinar manager, Rona Kalinga, who some of you may be familiar with. And then we actually, on the live day, we always have a moderator to support the speaker. And what we also advise we also advise speakers to have a colleague or a co-speaker, because as many of you know, if you are presenting, it's very difficult to keep tabs on your actual presentation and to monitor the chat at the same time. So we often, often the moderator is not necessarily an expert in your content area. So you really want to have a partner who will can either co-present with you or can focus on the questions and answers and the chat area. And we really advise that. What we do, and we're adopting the same approach at the moment for our virtual event. We are going to be fully supporting speakers with both guidelines ahead of time and also doing orientations, probably a group orientation rather than a one-on-one, as we will have probably 50 plus speakers at least. And we will also be providing an in-person moderator from the ATIA staff and a content advisor, probably one of our strand advisors, will be in the room with the speaker and or co-speakers to provide speaker support, because that is very important. And I'm sure, as many of you know, speaking to sort of presenting to a virtual audience, so to speak. We're lucky to have a live audience here, but presenting to a virtual audience, especially for pre-recorded sessions, is very daunting. So having a friendly, one or two friendly faces and voices in there to support you as a speaker is much required, much desired.
Melissa, any tips to add to
You bet.
supporting
I
speakers?
completely agree. We at AAC in the Cloud are huge fans of moderators. We very much appreciate our moderators, but we also see them as an advocate for our presenter as well as our audience. So through AAC in the Cloud, when we create our sessions, we have a moderator and the presenter that are in the session, and then things are broadcast through YouTube and then onto our website. So most people watch on our website so that they can get a certificate of attendance. But so it's just really the moderator and the speaker that are in the session together. And that makes kind of a great opportunity for our moderator to be a support to the speaker, to be in there a little bit early with them, let them make sure their slides are going as they should, make sure their volume sounds okay, that any videos are playing the way that they should, so they can check in and make sure things are okay. It also lets the moderator be an advocate for the attendees, so that if anything happens during the session, if the slides aren't advancing, if the audio is bad, the moderator can then step in and say, hold on just one second, we've got a little bit of an issue right here, let's try to address this so that we can work things out and have the best presentation possible for those that are viewing the session. When it comes to our speakers, we try really hard to keep in good contact with them before we do require a dry run, a practice session with them beforehand, which this year was kind of crazy because everybody is an expert on Zoom this year. So it was easy this year, but we have had in the past people that weren't quite sure how to share their slides or didn't know how to go into screen sharing, things like that. So it's very important to make sure that you do those practice sessions, on top of which it just gives people an opportunity to say, I've been in here, I've done this before. It's not my first time the day that I'm presenting. I've kind of had a little bit of experience with this. When we're working with our presenters, we also suggest, now AAC in the Cloud is a free conference, so we don't require this, but we suggest that our speakers make their slides available to their moderator, because we have had some sessions where a person was unable to share their slides for one reason or another, and so their moderator stepped in and was able to share the slides as the speaker spoke. So that's a piece that we strongly suggest. We don't require it, but it's something to be aware of and something to think through. We also always require that our speakers give us a phone number, because once in a while there's a problem that comes up, and if you're not seeing your email quickly, it's great to be able to text or call and say, hey, it's time for your session and you're not in here, is everything okay, or whatever. We just try really hard to stay connected and make sure that our presenters have a good way to contact us, that we've prepped them ahead of time and given them the supports that they need, but that we also have the way to reach out to them and make sure that their content is there for the community, because that's what is most important.
Wonderful tips. Now moving from presenters to attendees. And we know that this is one of the biggest concerns that people have about, they recognize the reality of needing to go to the virtual format, but they feel like they're going to really miss the social interactions and networking that occurs in a face-to-face venue. So what sort of strategies or advice do you have that might help to foster those social interactions and networking, both among and between presenters and attendees? So David, then Mike, then Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Dichter. I'm the CEO of ATIA. I probably know many of you, or have seen many of you, or met many of you at the conference. So we have really grappled with the social aspect of our virtual event, and we think that it's challenging. It is not the same, for those of you who've been at ATIA's event, it is not going to be the same as our event. It is not going to be the same coming together as a large community where you can connect and touch base with all these different people. But I will tell you one thing that we've decided that we're going to try our best to do. The environment we're in right now is Zoom webinar. And the ability for everyone to see everybody in some form or not is limited in Zoom webinar. For example, you guys can't even talk to us. There's no audio function for attendees in this. So we've actually decided with a lot of trepidation that we're going to try and have everything happen in the Zoom meeting room for all of our concurrent sessions, given that there is limitation. So now you have an issue of limitation. If you're going to have a virtual event, Zoom meeting rooms only go up to 1,000 people. Managing that and managing that experience is very different from managing a Zoom webinar experience. And you have to understand these things from the get-go. But we believe from a social connecting point of view, right now, all of us who are now panelists, we can see all the names and we can respond individually to you. In this particular Zoom webinar system, I'm not sure how much of that information you all see of each other. So that's a social interaction, and it's a way to help people connect. Just like when you happen to sit next to somebody in a meeting room and they say something and you whisper next to them saying, hey, I agree. Did you ever try this? Or have you heard this person speak? Or I just went to see this person's session. You got to talk to them about the same thing. we want to be able to sort of foster some of that, if possible, both in a big public chat room, but also some one-to-one stuff. And that's what makes it special for that. There are also ways to add in discussion functionality to a session that is separate from chat, so threaded discussions. For example, Mike and Angela already understand that if you're replying to somebody in a public chat space, writing down @Mike or @Angela helps people to identify who's responding. That's already in the from part, but who they're responding to or which comment they're responding to. And that's because Mike is like the ultimate Twitter user, and he gets all this stuff about how you kind of focus this. For those of us who are like still in the Stone Ages, we don't know all this stuff. So there are other ways by building in social activities. And I will be honest, we're not going to go heavy duty, extra cool tech stuff. We're going to actually go pretty light. We want to create pretty much those open platform rooms to allow people simply to talk to each other, whether it be to speakers in a little breakout room. Here's a list of the speakers, come into a main room, talk to Mike. Mike will say, oh, you should go talk to so-and-so in that particular room, and send you on your way. You finish there, you come out, you can go talk to another speaker, and make it more casual. And we, in our event that's going to come up in January, end of January, we're building that into the schedule. So that's just some of the social interaction pieces. It won't be the same as a regular conference. And I've seen platforms that will do every social interaction bell and whistle you can dream of. They're generally not accessible. That's number one. And generally incredibly expensive. That's number two. And generally will take all of your attendees the whole week to learn how to use them, and then they'll figure out how to do it. And that's just not worth it from our point of view. So you'll be introduced to lots of technologies that do lots of cool stuff. Those three questions you need to ask. How much effort will it take your people who are going to come to this to learn and use it? And if it takes a huge amount of effort, then it may not be worth using.
Great point. Great point.
Angela, I just want to answer Angela real quick. Not everyone can use Zoom, because not everyone's not allowed to use Zoom. And it's become a really big issue. We've had people say to us, I can't go to your event, it's in Zoom.
Wow.
Yeah, if you beat me to it, David. I was going to say similar things about Zoom. I still, even though we are definitely more comfortable in the virtual world of Zoom and Google Meet and Teams and whatever else we're in, every event I've done has had at least a half dozen people who this was their first time navigating some kind of virtual space. And so what we had tried to do at our Ed Camp is we ran a Zoom room all day as a hub they could come back to. So imagine if you think about how David just described, you're at a live conference and you just kind of pull to the side and chat with somebody. We left open a room that people, if they got stuck or weren't sure where to go or how to go or what to do or what was happening at any given point, they could drop back in the main room and somebody was always there. Now, granted, a lot of times I was doing something here and watching it off to the side on another computer, but I was there eventually to help keep them in line for little things, but little things that mattered and made someone actually enjoy the day. Like one lady came at she was in the wrong time zone. She had the time all wrong. So she came in looking for a session that had happened an hour ago. And she said, I'm having a problem because their schedule's wrong, because that session's not happening. And we'd say, well, no, we're Eastern and you're Central, and I think that's what happened. So let's figure out where you need to go now. So that certainly helped. It gave a live voice someone could talk to. David already hit on what I was going to say when he accused me of being on Twitter all the time, which is a good accusation. It's fine. But yeah, for the conferences we've been doing, we've been creating specific hashtags so people can follow along. They can share their resources. They can connect with each other that way. And the other thing that I started doing in live conferences as kind of a bonus way for people to connect and share information has really become kind of a critical piece to these other conferences that I've done, is that every session has a shared Google Doc that everyone can edit. And that gets announced in the beginning. It's linked to the schedule, and we strongly encourage the speakers to drop all their resources there. We have a table right at the top of that document that asks you to fill in who you are, your name, where you're from, and your email or your Twitter handle so people can connect. And then we encourage people to use that as a way to crowdsource notes and ideas and use it as a back channel conversation. Because I agree with David, we can't just lump more stuff on people. I think there, like I said before, there's only so much bandwidth for stuff. I love stuff, but I don't like having bunches of things open at once. So finding a way that's easy for them to interact with, but also gives them some value to make it feel like you're sitting next to that person. And if I could just share a story about the conference, which made me laugh when David said about leaning in and talking to someone. 3 years ago at ATIA, I sat next to somebody I didn't know in a session, and we started having a conversation. And by the end of that session, the gentleman had said to me, it would be cool if someone did this session like this next year. And I said, well, let's do it together. And we did that session 2 different times in the next 2 conferences. So those social interactions are so critical, and we have to find ways to make that happen virtually.
Great, thank you, Mike. Melissa,
Thank
what are
you.
your thoughts on this?
You bet. So with AAC in the cloud, our main social interaction platform is through Slack. So we have a Slack channel, well, a Slack chat room that's available for all attendees. It's just a free place that people can come. And then we have AAC in the cloud is divided into 3 tracks. So there's 3 sessions that are going each hour, and we have a Slack channel for each of those sessions. So people that are in that particular session can enter the appropriate track and make comments. And it's a great way to crowdsource, to answer questions together, and to just engage with other people that are watching the same thing that you're watching. We have some other channels that are in there as well, but I won't go into all that, but it's been a good way for us to be able to let our attendees kind of rub shoulders with each other, get to know presenters, and just connect with one another. It's the same source that we use every year, so that's been a nice part, that as people they learn that particular venue, then they're already experienced for next year. So that's been a nice thing to be able to do. Some additional pieces that we do for social interactions, we usually have some sort of, we're obviously focused on AAC and specifically for our conference, and we usually have some sort of share your ideas or share your experience or something like that piece that goes on before the conference starts, where people can submit a favorite, I don't know, AAC supporter or idea or tip or whatever, and then we will create just a quick photo card and then post those on our social media, so people get to share their ideas, and then they get to see, look what I did, I said that, and they put it out there for everybody able to see, and then other people can share it. That's been a really great way to let people connect. We do create graphics cards for each of our presenters that we put up on our social media, and then other people can also share, and that's been really fun to watch people say, hey, I know that presenter. Here, look at her card. Let's go make sure that we're available at this time to go watch that particular session. So that has been a great thing. We usually run, I know everybody who does conferences runs contests because they're fun and people like them, but we try to do things that are even a little bit silly. We always have a coloring contest. So I have a 14-year-old son who happens to love to draw. So this year he created a couple of AAC themed coloring pages, and we had a coloring contest with those. We just kind of do lots of little bits and pieces that draw people in. Most of it is through our Slack chat or through our social media channels that already exist. We try not to bite off lots of extra pieces that we don't want to have to manage. I think David's spot on when he said you could have a plethora of ways to share, but you will be flooded, you'll be overwhelmed, and you won't be able to manage it all. So pick the things that are important to you, pick the piece that fits your needs, and then do it really, really well. And that will be a benefit to those that are attending your conference or that are coming to be part and engaging with you there.
Great, thank you. So, and this is a key piece, I'm sure, for those of you who are doing AT conferences, and in some cases you've really just done exhibits. How does that translate? So, David, would you take us through how we can engage, recruit vendors, exhibitors, and make their wonderful products available to our attendees in a virtual environment?
Sure. So, how do I even begin? So there are a lot of different things that you can do and choose to do in relation to the companies, most of whom will probably be members of ATIA. I have something to share after I'm done generally talking about this, but I want you to know that for the ATIA virtual conference, we're letting all of our members have a baseline of activities at no cost. And I want you to understand why we've taken this approach. There is no way that you or us can promise them the kind of experience that they get in an exhibit hall. We can't define 100% of the people who register for an event on what their behavior will be when it comes to experiencing companies. No one can. No event globally has been able to prove this out at a level that actually is the same as a live event. Now, last week, I sat through software presentations from 15 different companies showing all these bells and whistles around exhibit halls, three-dimensional experiences and all this great stuff. And you know, it still doesn't say, how do you know that your people will actually talk to these companies? The companies are going to be really hungry this year. I know for a fact they already are, on better ways and finding ways to interact with potential customers. Most of them are not going to be able to go into schools and institutions and programs. Most of those programs are going to be, if they open and when they open, they're going to be closed to outsiders for the most part. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. I don't think any of us would disagree with some of that. At the same time, finding new ways to give companies an opportunity to have that exposure is really the key, whether it be through the educational program or whether it be through games and contests, which I think are awesome, or whether it be other mechanisms. I think the one part that will be hard is if you think of the exhibitors as part of your revenue stream, I think you need to think hard about what those dollar asks are going to be. Many companies will be more than willing to contribute something, but remember, they're probably struggling too. Their businesses have been affected just like everybody else's businesses have been affected. And I think we need to be really careful and cautious. So that's not just my hat of being CEO of an industry association, but I think that's how we all need to be thinking about these things. That being said, what do virtual exhibit halls look like? Well, essentially, they look like a list of companies on the web and a whole bunch of web pages. That's what virtual exhibit halls are. And you got to decide whether or not you're in a position to build that kind of web environment for companies. Here's the offer. Do you mind if I share, Amy, if I can? Share my screen. Oh, you cannot share while other participants are sharing. So if you can turn your sharing off, I can try and share.
All right, just a minute. Go ahead and try. You may need to be.
I am able to share.
Right, all right.
Therese, you're going to have to probably log out of your Zoom and log back in. So on the left is simply a list of companies that you can click on and go decide, and you can sort it and slice it and dice it by company, by strand. Maybe it's AAC, maybe it's education, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. You get some basic information about a company. This is pretty standard virtual exhibit hall stuff. On the right is actually a company's virtual booth. Pretty flat, basic kind of thing. But what's really cool about it is it can have all these links inside of here. And even further, this is just a flat image, and this has nothing to do with AT or ATIA. It's some other event, but it's the platform we're using. And in fact, it's actually almost exactly how we're going to create this whole thing. And then you can actually put sessions in it. And if you're not going to have everything forced to be live, then all of a sudden you can actually have content that's in here that lasts for whatever period of time you're going to keep it open for, or forever for that matter. There's nothing wrong with this being something that's extendable beyond your one-time thing. A company can add in here things like a link to get more information. Hey, contact me. They can add in here, hey, come to my Zoom room of my company's Zoom room at this hour of the day, and I'll be sitting here waiting for you, and all the companies might be there for 1 hour. It could be all kinds of, here's our help desk, here's how you do this, there's a link to this or a link to that, or here's a handout, here's a presentation, here's 10 presentations, here are the CUs. This particular version is built on a learning management system, so the CUs are going to be in here, everything's going to be part of this. We're going to build this. And I'm going to tell you right now, if any of you have an interest in accessing this, no cost, there's no price attached to that. If you would like to access whatever exhibit hall we build as a way to present basic information about our member companies with whatever information happens to be put in there by them, then it's yours for the taking. That would be awesome for you to be able to access that. And we can make that easily available to everybody. I think it's going to be hard to build these kinds of things. And if everybody's doing the same thing over and over and over again, great, all the power to you. If you don't want to do that, we're going to do that work over the next 3 months. And it's going to be pretty cool. Here's another cool part. We're going to be collecting another activity you could do. We're going to be doing scavenger hunts. It's going to be company video presentations that attendees have to watch in order to be eligible for a prize. We're going to give big prizes away. We can control that through our learning management system, and it's going to be a vision impairment scavenger hunt, or it's going to be all company scavenger hunt, or an AAC scavenger hunt, and all the companies will give us something. And at the end of it, they get a certificate. We get to know they attended it, and then we get to give the prizes away during the live event. Guess what? If we build that, there is no reason why you guys can't all use it too, because it's the same content you want. And if that's true, then just point people to it and let them use it. And here's the cool part. We are going to still give prizes away every month as it relates to anybody who participates in that particular thing. We don't think that's just a virtual event thing. We think that's now become a year-round thing for anybody. And we think it's kind of a cool way to start helping companies and start getting information, digestible information out. And the best part is they don't have to watch it all at one time. If there are 25-minute videos in there, they can watch one day, come back another day, come back another day. You'll start seeing that from us. You can build that yourself. So I'll stop there because I've taken lots of time to try and describe that. But if you like those ideas, and I'm not reading all of the chat, so I'm hoping you're saying, so, you know, however you can engage with the exhibitors, go right ahead and all the power to that. And I think that's important. Make it rich and content rich. If it's the little stuff like building virtual halls and booths and things like that, you know, your time is precious and valuable. We're going to put the time into doing it. It may not have everybody you want. And if other people want to use it, they can just become a member of ATIA. That's fine by me. Or you can make your own. Anyway, I wanted to put that offer out and say that's the kind of way we're thinking about our companies and our virtual exhibit hall. And like, it isn't just a one-off. This is something that continue for all the time. That's it. Hope that's helpful.
Very cool, and I'm sure there'll be more questions when we give an opportunity for people to ask more questions. That's a very kind offer and sounds exciting. think there was a question whether the prizes are going to be real prizes or virtual prizes.
Not one well, they will be virtual because they'll mostly be cash money in virtual gift cards.
Well,
Not
that's
one
pretty
prize.
cool.
We've committed not to give away one prize that's under $100. So we think that that's going to be fun. That's for me. That's fun. It's fun to give money away. It's like cool. So we're going to give company product away. We're going to give registrations to 2022 away in our thing. And for the most part, we'll be giving, really to make it easy on Caroline and I, we'll be giving away $100, like Visa or American, whatever, these cash cards that are $100, where you can do it electronically so we don't have to even use the mail.
Cool. Okay, now we're going to drill down a little bit more into logistics. So Melissa, talk to us a little bit about pre-recorded versus and live sessions.
You bet. We actually use both of these options, pre-recorded and live sessions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one and why we might choose to do one or the other. AAC in the Cloud overall is a live conference at first. So it's a live conference during the original broadcast, I guess, of these sessions. And we usually run for 2 days and go from about noon to 6 Eastern time each day. And we'll have sessions. We usually have 3 sessions running each hour for that time. And generally speaking, those are live sessions. So we ask our presenter to come, 10 minutes before their session, and then they present for about 50 to 55 minutes, and then we move on to the next session. And that there is something really beautiful about a live session. When we work with presenters, if you have a pre-recorded session, there's this lack of pressure, but in a good way, that's there if you know that you're being pre-recorded, and you could stop and you could say, hold on just a sec, let's try that one more time. It's not quite the same kind of engagement as a live session. So we really do prefer to do live sessions overall when we can. However, that's not always possible. We have worked with several presenters who have extreme anxiety or who live out of country, and so our time frames don't quite match up nicely. Or maybe we have a presenter that is just simply not available during our live conference. And for those kinds of things, if they're a presenter that we feel could benefit the AAC community and we want to be able to carry their presentation, we will allow for pre-recorded sessions. Most of the time, our pre-recorded sessions are done as part of our pre-conference events. So those are released about a week-ish before our regular conference, and people can watch them on their own time whenever they want. We just kind of make those videos available. We do occasionally allow a pre-recorded session within the regular schedule for AAC in the Cloud, but very honestly, those are usually some of our least attended sessions, because you can kind of tell as you're watching, you can kind of get a feel that this is not the same as a live. It's on video. I don't know exactly why it is, but you kind of do get a feel that this is not quite the same as someone who's presenting live, and it's not the same engagement. You don't have that moderator connection where they are making comments and things about things that are going on right that moment. So while we very much appreciate our pre-recorded sessions, our live sessions do get better attendance during our live conference. Now, AAC in the Cloud, we keep our videos up for at least 6 months following our original presentation. So if you don't watch the sessions when they're live, you can watch them as a pre-recorded session. So I guess everything we do is sort of pre-recorded if you look at it that way. But anyway, that's a little bit of experience with our views of pre-recorded sessions. They are sometimes a really good fit. We have worked with some presenters who simply cannot do things live, and it's been a good opportunity or a good option. It's also a good way to bring a few additional sessions. We're limited in time when we have these 2 days, these few hours, these 2 days. So if there are people that have something they want to share that we can release as a pre-conference session, that's kind of a nice piece as well to say, hey, this is important content that we want to get out to the community, even though they can't be part of a live session. So anyway, there you go.
Thanks. So Caroline and then Melissa, talk a little bit to us about scheduling. Like, what makes sense in terms of the number of concurrent sessions per time slot, scheduling plenary sessions. What about the length of each session? So your advice and experience on that topic?
Happy to share the headaches that David and I have had over the last 2 or 3 months. That's going to be trying to take our in-person conference, which folks who don't know it is about 350 sessions over 2.5 days with about 26 to 30 different rooms running concurrently. So one of the things that we had to come to grips with the virtual event is the number of sort of constraints and restrictions that we had to do to take everything that we wanted to offer and how to do with the restrictions we had to work with the virtual event. So a couple of those are just very logistical restrictions. The number of Zoom rooms or the number of Zoom meeting rooms that we had available to us at any one time. And then also we read and see and hear a lot about Zoom fatigue these days. So there's also the capacity for people to receive professional development via Zoom, if that's your main, or video conferencing, that's your main vehicle for delivering it. And there have to be, you have to build in breaks, you have to build in substantial breaks. We also knew from our point of view that we wanted to make sure that we built into each day time for our exhibitors and time for attendees to spend time with our exhibitors, and also in the same day to build in time for social networking. So that did restrict the amount of education that we could do. So what we came up with is very similar to Melissa's organization. So we expanded our 2.5-day in-person event to 8 days, Monday through Thursday in the first week, and then Monday through Thursday in the second week. And we agreed that we would move from a 16-minute and a 19-minute and a 20-minute session to a consistent 60-minute education session. We felt that was the right amount of time for most of our speakers to be able to deliver the content that they wanted. And also from our attendees' point of view, the right amount of time with breaks after each of those sessions to be able to absorb and digest that information via the video conferencing platform. We also wanted to make sure that we would be, for the live sessions, we would do 3 different hour time slots in the day, and that would leave us 2 other time slots for the exhibit experience and the social networking. And bearing in mind, as Melissa mentioned, the international nature of both AEC in the cloud and also the ATIA conferences, we had to bear in mind what the time zone interests were. So we are scheduling them approximately 12 p.m. Eastern time to run through approximately 6 p.m. Eastern time. We are intending to record each of the live sessions. So for those who can't make it to the live session, they will be able to make it on demand for up to 5 or 6 months after the event. We are having 5 concurrent sessions in each of the time slots. But with the knowledge that individuals who can't make those live sessions can actually know that they will be recorded and they can access the information later. We don't, traditionally at our in-person conference, we don't actually have a keynote. That's one of the differences from, I think, from our conference than many other conferences. We traditionally don't have a keynote, so we all of our sessions are breakout sessions. What we are looking to with the virtual conference is that in our social hour, we can make that into a sponsored keynote if that's something that one of our member companies wants to sponsor from a big name speaker. So there is that opportunity in a different kind of way than a keynote would be. And that will be available to everybody free of charge as part of that.
Caroline, can I jump in on you there for a second?
Please do, David.
It's not my scheduled time, but I wanted to bring this up. You all have to decide who your attendees are going to be. So who's going to come to your virtual event? That will help you define your schedule more than anything else. If you think you're going to do a virtual event in just one day, and it's all consumers and family members and caregivers, and if that's their target audience, then that may actually work fairly well. But if you're targeting other professionals and practitioners and you're going to do a one-day event and it's all going to be live, think very carefully about how many of those people are really going to be able to spend a whole day with you. We've thought long and hard about how we're breaking up our content so that we give professionals a choice. If you have on your staff or in your organization an SLP, even though they may want all the content, we've figured out that maybe they can carve out one full afternoon in the schedule to spend with us in a week, not 4 afternoons in a week. So our AAC strand is going to be all in one day. This is a key piece of understanding. You know, you can run as many concurrent sessions as you want, but if you only get 10 people showing up and you have 10 concurrent sessions, you're going to have one person maybe in each session. Is that what you want? Even if you have 5,000 people showing up, if you have 5,000 people registering, trying to figure out how many are actually going to show up to the live stuff that you do is really challenging. Even though they may even say they're going to come on the day of that event, they're working, their kids are at home, they got little ones, their husband is sick. I mean, you can think of all the reasons why you didn't show up to a webinar that day and said, I'll watch the recorded piece. Those are some of the biggest hurdles of unknowns. Mike, you probably will agree, of unknowns in terms of behavior of who we're trying to get. And if you can answer some of that, then you will come up with the right schedule for your agency, for your organization, for how you want to put it together. And it's going to be different from all of you. Sorry, Caroline, for jumping in there.
That's okay. Thanks for your words of wisdom, David. Melissa, did you have anything to add about number
I will
of
go
sessions?
quickly. I will say it so fast, but not too fast. I totally agree with what David said. One of the most important pieces as you are crafting your conference is to remember your why, to remember why you're doing this in the first place and what the purpose behind it is, because that really will affect every single decision that you make. And if you start to get worried about, oh, who's going to like this or who's going to say something bad, you're going to get caught up in the wrong thing. Somebody will always say something bad. Somebody will always hate it. That's just how it is. So you've got to focus on what is most important. What are we going for? What's our goal? And then keep that in mind. Our first year of AAC in the Cloud, we have 3 tracks each hour. We've always done that. We will probably continue to do that. It's a good fit for what we're after. But we tried to arrange things so that we had a family related track and then a professionals related track and then a vendors related track. And it was a flop. It was horrible. It just did not work at all. So we adjusted the next year and said, never mind that, we're just going to pick the best sessions and try to fit them so that, we don't have all AAC in 1 hour, but it's kind of throughout the day. So somebody could, like David said, you're not going to have people that can just sit down and watch 2 days worth of content straight through mostly. You may have a few, but that's not the norm. So we tried to adjust and move things so that things were available to everybody at varying times, and that was a much better fit for our audience. Things have been much better viewed and attended since we kind of set aside our preconceived, here's how to make it organized, and instead went with what's going to be best for getting this content out to the people that need it. Let's see, we do like having several sessions. We like having 3 sessions at a time. It's a good fit for us. We didn't like the idea of having 2 competing sessions because then it kind of became who's more popular. Is this one's going to be popular? Is this going to be popular? And we felt like it kind of pitted our presenters against each other, and we didn't like that. So we went with 3 because it's a little bit less in that arena. Also, we like having more than 1 session because if there's a problem with a session, which happens, there's something else that people we don't lose them. They don't say, oh, never mind, I'm going to go grocery shopping. They can pop into another session and watch that instead. As we're dealing with these sessions, ours last 50 to 55 minutes so that there's a little bit of time to move into the next session every hour. And we find that our later time slots are usually a little bit less viewed than the earlier time slots. People start to get some fatigue as you move through the day. But we do our best to make sure that we have solid content and that people will continue to view the content even after the live sessions have been completed.
Great, thank you. David, do you want to talk a little bit about considerations with the number of registrants and the capacity, and then move into accessibility tips?
So you have capacity limits on products like Zoom and GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar and Zoom Webinar. Zoom Webinar goes up to 10,000 people. It's totally awesome. If anybody gets 10,000 people in a Zoom webinar room, I'll give you a prize in this field. That would be totally cool. And I don't even know if we'll get it. But that being said, I think we've thought about a budget, and we have fees that will be attached to registrations, a little different than some of the others, a little different than AC in the Cloud, a little different than some of the events that you might do. So we had to think about kind of budget and how we're doing that. But the fact of the matter is we actually are going to have a free event also. So a component of our event will be free, and a whole bunch of content will be free. And so capacity, we're planning on blowing it out of the water. It'll be totally really cool. Can I mention accessibility? The simpler you go with products that you know are accessible, the safer you are. We purposefully, we have a learning management system that is accessible. We know that it is, and we're going to work with it. Means that we have to do some things a little bit in a weird way, but it's technology that we know is accessible. Most of the technology out there for virtual environments is definitely not accessible. I've looked at so many products over the past 3 months. It just isn't. Our accessibility is we're going to have captioning for everything. In fact, it might be AI-based captioning, not live captioners. We're debating on the services that are available right now. If you want to look at services, there's a product called Streamer. There's a product called Rev. Rev does post-production captioning. They just introduced Rev for Zoom. Sorry, captioner, I know you're on here, and I know that kind of could cut into your business, but we're trying to figure out if we're going to be able to do any ASL or at all. Maybe on demand for a schedule of things. And all of our recordings will then have a playback that has captioning in it. I'll just leave that at the accessibility thing.
All right, Caroline, do you want to talk to us a little bit about continuing education or certificates of completion?
I'd love to. One of my favorite topics, as you know, Amy. Yes, and this is where I think David mentioned the ATIA learning management system that we have, the LMS. And so we provide certificates of completion and CEUs for for both our online learning center courses and also for the conference. And that has really helped us streamline our processes. And continuing education and attendance are really, really important for our attendees. Many of them are required to have them as part of their annual professional or biannual professional licensing requirements. And so it's very important that we provide them as part of our education program. ATIA is, at the moment, we are a provider for 4 different types of CEUs. What I would call a generic CEU, which is from the International Association of Continuing Education and Training, IACET. IACET actually accredits an organization and to make sure the processes that we go through to provide professional development meets the ANSI standards. We also provide with the American Occupational Therapy Association. So we provide AOTA CEUs for both the online courses and the conference. And we're also a provider for ASHA, the American Speech Language Hearing Association. And we are also a provider for ACVREP, which is the accredited certification are vision rehabilitation and vision impairment professionals. We are looking at, and we have got preliminary approval to be able to provide CRC credits for the certified rehabilitation counselors for the virtual event. That'll be the 5th type of CEU we'll be able to provide. We know it's very important for our attendees to be able to have the choice of CEUs, and for some of them it is a choice. Some occasionally might want to have more than one type of CEU, and that's part of their professional requirements.
Great. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. So one thing I'd like to ask is, if you are holding or planning a virtual conference in 2020, what's left, or 2021, please let us know. If you are a state ATF program, we are happy to list the information on our state events page on the AT3 website. So please let us know. Looking around the internet, the Association on Machine Computing has a very cool guide. The link is here, and Kim, maybe you could type it into the chat window for us. So you might want to look at this reference as well. In addition, today's webinar is recorded, and it will be archived and available on the AT3 Center's YouTube channel. Give us a week or 10 days to check the captioning and post-production and get it posted. And it will also be posted on our COVID-19 page, and I'll probably cross-post it under the training page on the AT3 Center website. So a hearty thank you to our attendees and to all of you who participated, even with your comments in the chat. And let's see if we have time for 1 or 2 chat questions directed specifically to one of our presenters. Anybody have a question that has not been answered yet? Feel free to type it into the chat. Okay, that was one of my questions about having virtual cocktail parties. We have heard of trade organizations that send goodies to attendees, like, I don't know, I guess they could send a bottle of wine for a virtual
Let me know when you find one.
virtual happy hour. So again, hearty thanks to our presenters for sharing their collective wisdom, and good luck to you all with your virtual AT conferences and expos. So,
Thank you, Amy, and everyone.
Thanks, Amy.
all right, thank you all. Have a great afternoon.